guess we'll go. Just start off arguing.
This is our intro. Welcome. This is how it starts every time.
You're recording. Hey!
Yeah.
Oh
Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of Brown Conversation. I'm Fluid, aka Chris.
I'm Datu, Clark, if you care.
Yeah. And we also have a guest today. This is Venice. Welcome, Venice, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey.
Pronouns, all that shit.
Hey y'all, I'm Venice. Pronouns she, her, hers. And what's poppin'? Should I do a general bio?
Yeah, tell everybody about yourself and everything, and then we'll pop up on how we know you and shit.
Okay, for sure. I'm a third year at SF State. I'm a full-time student, part-time barista. How to plug that? Very few personality traits out here. I'm a third year Becca student, concentrating in film and TV production. And I'm also the academics coordinator for the Filipino American Collegiate Endeavor at San Francisco State University.
So me and Clark know Venice through PACE, or Filipino American Collegiate Endeavor at SF State and everything. Yeah, you also heard that she is the current academics coordinator, and this is why we're actually doing the fucking academics episode. Here we are!
You remember in our last few, every time we go on a tangent about school, we end up just kind of going, man, fuck academics. Here we are.
Fuck academics.
Yeah. Before we go into that, let's go into just a general check-in and everything. So Venice, how you doing? Out of 10, how you feeling?
Right now, I think I'm at a solid 8. In general, lately, been at a 6, 7. I don't know. School's kind of just, kind of killing me. Not gonna lie, I haven't done, shit this semester. Can we curse?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Have you listened to us?
I get so nervy. My Becca switch just, goes
What?
Shit, what was I saying then? Oh my gosh.
School sucks.
Oh yeah, school sucks. Fuck academics, yo. What is it at this point? I just haven't done shit. I haven't done any of my essays.
Roll credits.
That's just the entire episode is fuck academics. No.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack as to why we say fuck academics, and yeah.
Don't worry, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Clark, how you feeling?
What?
How are you feeling, Clark? I'm supposed to raise my fucking voice levels right now because audio's being stupid and I'm to blame for it. So I'm trying to voice myself out. I'll fucking go next. Fuck you.
How are you doing, Chris?
I was better before you got here. Anyways, out of 10, I'm at a 7 right now. That full moon in Scorpio has been doing wonders for me right now. It's been sunny for the past couple of days. On the days we're supposed to film and shit, it's cloudy. I fucking hate SF, but it's okay. We'll deal with it and everything. Yeah, school's whatever, honestly. Stupid. I hate it and everything. I'm just continuing what I'm doing right now. Working on myself more is being better, being in touch with my emotions and my body more and everything. And we'll get into more self-love in the next episode. But yeah, I've been practicing a lot of that more and yeah, therapy and shit. How about you, Bucker?
I think I'm sitting at a solid 9. Just finished my second cup of coffee. I'm eating breakfast right now. Literally right now. And
ASMR.
Yeah. Anyways, yes, screw school. Kind of just, man, so much to talk about as far as school goes.
Mm-hmm.
Since I'm the last one to check in, let me just tell y'all how it's going right now. So I go to City College, right? It's great. It's free. That doesn't translate well into online classes because they already didn't want to give us classes to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we have now is kind of just hard to deal with. I'm thankful for teachers that understand that and are like, look, I'll give you a final grade based off of you just turning in all the assignments before the end of the semester, okay? And I'm like, thank God. But at this point, through just dealing with pandemic school, basically, I've pretty much all but finalized that I'm just going to take a break for the rest of the year. I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to force myself to like overcommit to school when school's not even going to try to commit to the students that go there.
Period.
That being said, City College is one of those things, especially in San Francisco, it's always been like a big topic of debate for a lot of people because at the moment, especially right now, they are trying to lay off literally like something like over 200
Over 200.
over
like,
200 staff and trying to just pink slip a bunch of teachers because we're in a fucking budget crisis. It's not really a crisis, they just don't want to stop paying their administration. But that being said, the day that we're recording right now,
April 29th,
they are currently hosting a Zoom meeting to, at least specifically to talk about saving Philippine studies at CCSF. And this we'll highlight more about this later, but they're basically scrubbing like the entirety of Philippine studies from I'm sorry, my coffee's coming back up.
Mm-hmm. It's almost as if you shouldn't eat during the fucking podcast.
Fine, I'll put my breakfast away. Jeez. Anyways, yeah, so they're trying to highlight the need and necessity for ethnic studies in academia, and something that we're going to talk about today is relevant education. For people to pick and choose what is considered education and the proper curriculum is at this point kind of ridiculous. And again, one of just the many reasons we're going to say fuck academia in this episode. Hear it a lot. You're going to hear it a lot. So, yeah. Segue.
Yeah, so community highlight for me would be kind of like I was gonna say it's like the anniversary, or like April 27th was like the 500th like anniversary of like the Battle of Mactan and everything. And thank you to ethnic studies and Philippine studies, because without like all that, we wouldn't be able to learn that like like the Visayan warriors like led by Datu Lapu-Lapu held off the Spanish conquest of the Philippines by almost 50 years because of the victory of that Battle of Mactan. And we wouldn't know this shit if that wasn't available to us. So like it gives us a lot of power to understanding that part of history where indigenous Philippine people were actually victorious in a battle of Western conquest and everything. Yeah, that's my. I have another community highlight, which is kind of like justice for Roger Allen, which was a man who was murdered by Daly City Police, and DCPD and San Mateo County are trying to cover that up and everything. I'm not sure about like the specifics about like how like their death and everything, but it's just a lot of things that community's trying to show up for that clearly the San Mateo County is really trying to cover it up and everything.
It's
so,
not like they tell us the truth anyways.
period. So yeah, always gonna be ACAB forever and everything, and just rest in community, Roger Allen, and countless others along the way. Yeah.
No community highlights, I'm sorry.
You have no community.
It's okay.
It's fine.
It's fair. It's
honestly, a lot has been happening like throughout the past like month and everything, or just in general. So it's like a lot of activism fatigue.
Yes.
That some people are
like, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to be caught up with everything that's going on just because of how much is going on.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's really hard to like keep track of everything right now. I feel like every time I open up social media, it's something new, and it just sucks.
and it's really
Going back
draining
into
too.
it.
Right.
It's like bad news after bad news after bad news, and then it's like you feel like you can't actually talk about something before something bad happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's why we do this podcast. So hopefully we can start talking about some things in depth as they happen. But academia, let's get into it.
Yeah. So before we kind of like talk about ethnic studies, I want to ask y'all like, what is your like experiences or like mindset towards like school and education before you were like exposed to like ethnic studies at like state or anything? If not, I can go first because I have so many points to just pop off on.
I'll let you go first. It's okay.
Thank you. Well, first off, a lot of the teachers that were really like mostly teaching was just mostly white and everything. Especially, I'm from San Jose and everything. Independence High School, if you know where that is, it's one of the biggest high schools in like the city, and most of the like student population is just like BIPOC students and everything. But why is most of the faculty and everything just like white representing and everything? It's very annoying. I didn't realize the implications of that and like having white teachers and everything, and the difference between like teachers of color, and until like I got here. But the more I learned about myself and the more I learned about like the power dynamic between like teachers and students and everything, the more I just kind of like got annoyed with school. If I didn't like the teachers, I didn't like the work that they were doing and everything. And I noticed when I like the teachers and have a connection with them, I realized, oh, I'm doing better in like my freaking like math class and everything. Oh, I'm paying attention more to the readings. I'm doing the homework and everything because I love you as a person. I love how you're like talking to me as a person, and not having that or understanding that power dynamic and kind of like using that way to kind of like talk to each other as human. That's what I thought first. That's why I kind of wanted to be like a student like counselor or like therapist first, because just like I wanted that connection with students to help them like boost them in life. Now I want to be a teacher because of ethnic studies, and that taught me how important freaking relevant education and representation in education is so important, especially representative histories for students of color. So that's my experience. I have a lot more if you like ask me specific questions, but yeah, that's my general experience.
Totally. Yeah, very similar. I didn't really understand the role of academia in my personal life. I never really, I want to say never, but I never really applied myself in academics in high school. I went to a predominantly white high school taught by white teachers. And what do we learn in history classes? We learn about white U.S. history for like a solid 13 years of our lives. But kind of like what Chris said, I never really connected to people as, in terms of like academics. I never really applied myself to, my other teachers as well, and I never did well as a result. And I always thought it was because like I thought I just dumbed down over the years. I always thought it was my fault, until I started learning about ethnic studies and started like realizing like, oh, I'm not stupid. I just didn't give a fuck about white men. And it really doesn't like apply to me whatsoever. And it's just like that whole dynamic also that Chris mentioned. Didn't really, I feel like people always talked about how education is a weapon. I always watch movies, or not always watch movies, but there's a lot of movies that talk about how education is a weapon. I never understood that until I got to college and started paying a shit ton of money to use education as a weapon, which we'll get more into later, but yeah.
Oh, my turn. Sorry.
Yeah, it's your podcast.
I'm an active listener. My bad. I mean, for me, I always thought maybe I was just like a bad student or something, but it wasn't really that. I realized that like it kind of just changed topic to topic. And this is why I'm personally a big believer in relevant education. And like I said, there was so many like classes I had to take for high school and prereqs for college that felt almost entirely unnecessary, right? U.S. history, for one. I get, like, taking it once, basic U.S. history class. Well, I don't know why I have to go over it again when we get into world history. Why is it literally, like, the first half of the semester when I take a world history class, and then the other half of the quote-unquote world history is Eurocentric cultures for the most part, right? I know a lot about fucking Egypt and England and all of this shit from just like a lot of white representing like cultures for the most part. I don't know anything about cultures in Africa, cultures in Asia, cultures in other parts of the world that aren't just Eurocentric for the most part. I know a lot about Spain. That didn't help me much, except that like when I get to college, all of a sudden I discover ethnic studies, right? What do you mean there's a whole building for studying other cultures? That was like one of the first things that they showed me at San Francisco State, and they were like, yeah, and we're like the only college that has it. And I was like, excuse me? What do you mean the only college? You mean nobody else talks about how, like, other cultures exist, where they come from? Nope, just us. And we have to fight for that shit. Just saying. Oh, we're still fighting for it. What do you mean? Oh, they don't think it's relevant education. Everybody needs to learn business and STEM majors because that's how this country works. If you're not gearing towards white capitalism, you're in the wrong direction.
Juicy capitalism.
And I don't know, it blew my mind that even in San Francisco, one of like the snowflakiest of snowflake places, damn fucking blizzard over here. I mean that in the best way. I love the city. They still have to fight for this kind of stuff, and it just seems kind of ridiculous. And for me, this was like the pivot point for me, where I realized I'm going to school for the wrong reasons. I'm going to school. I started college out of the expectation that I needed to do this to be successful in business and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Not realizing that education should be relevant to my passions and what I actually want to do in my career fields. I eventually ended up just dropping my major and switching entirely to something that I knew I was going to be happy in. The other thing I realized was that I needed to do this at my own pace. There's a lot of stigma around, we got to finish college in 4 years, stuff like that. And this is all relevant to the conversation later, but there's this general problem with the necessity of academia and these institutions to be successful. And the pressure for, especially like minority cultures, to push their children towards these institutions that don't even want to serve them to begin with. And it's pretty much what we want to talk about, especially focusing on ethnic studies and forcing, like I said, forcing minorities basically to kind of adopt more of a white-based education than something that applies to them.
Right.
And I didn't realize school was actually effective for me until I started learning things that actually applied to me. I was like, oh, brown people do these things. Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like what changed after like ethnic studies and everything, I saw myself living in the future because I saw myself in history. And I saw I was like, when like taking ethnic studies classes or anything, or with like PACE, I felt like I mattered. My voice mattered. My whole like existence mattered and everything. Beforehand, I was just trigger warning or everything. You can skip to whatever on the screen on YouTube, whatever. But like I was very just like, I was like suicidal and everything, just because of just like I was put in a world, into a system that didn't care about me, my feelings, or my existence. So why should I care about myself? Then all of a sudden I'm just like transported into this magical brown world of just excellence and passion and beauty. And I see me in that. It's just like, yo, I can confidently say, like with many others, probably like with the rest of y'all, that ethnic studies really saved my life in a way where nothing else, in a world that didn't care. Like ethnic studies cared and everything, because it kind of built up my wellness and everything. And that's why I love it. And that's why I kind of want to continue building that up and everything, so that other people like me can like face that, because I don't want to see another BIPOC like body on the news.
Right.
I don't want to see any of that. I want to see like more better news and shit.
Yeah.
I want to see more like performative like beauty for like BIPOC individuals.
Yeah.
And so I feel like ethnic studies is a good like stepping stone for that, and also kind of implementing that with other studies as well. It's just like the whole like being of just like you being represented and you being cared for by the curriculum matters so much. And that's why ethnic studies people who take ethnic studies at state have a higher retention rate to graduate. But for some reason state just doesn't want to give us funding for that shit. I'm like, okay, you like parade this around like, oh, I am like, we are the like only like college in the US to have a college of ethnic studies. Then why don't you fund this shit, motherfucker? You fund this every chance that you defund this every chance that you get. It's like blows my mind. So like, yeah.
definitely uses this. He definitely uses.
That's
I have
staying in.
anxiety. I'm sorry. I feel like the administration definitely uses shit like the TWLF, like we're talking about, like ethnic studies, as for clout, and they're like putting so much money into like celebrations and mural celebrations, the anniversaries, etc., etc. Why don't you allocate some of that money into ethnic studies every year? Why don't you, like, if you're gonna use us for clout, fund us? You know what I'm saying? Like, pretty much like what you just said. There's really not much to it. It's just fun ethnic studies if you're gonna keep using it for clout, because once it's gone, then what the hell are you gonna use? How else are you gonna recruit students?
Literally
dude?
nothing special about state.
Literally
I mean, our
nothing else.
Becca thing, but just like still.
We're like 20th in like film. That's it.
Yeah, just another institutionally
Exactly.
racist system.
Exactly.
We talked about this in the last episode, if you're keeping up.
Oh yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, it's almost just like virtue signaling at this point. And it's just like, yeah, we support all these cultures, and it's like, I don't really think you do.
It's like lip service and shit.
Yes.
Mhm.
Every email I get from state, it's just like we're celebrating, like we're in solidarity with AAPI communities. Like, are you really? Because I remember in 2016, like 3 students had to be on a hunger strike so that you can continue to fund ethnic studies, and even then we didn't get full funding that we were promised.
And there's gonna be a lot of people that argue it's just like, why does your culture have to apply to your, like, say if you're like a STEM major or something, you know? It's like, well, it doesn't even matter. And it's just like, well, yes, it does. Because what happens when you have, like, who's the smartest STEM-related person you can think of right now? Elon Musk, maybe.
Oh, okay. I don't
Word,
even care.
word.
But wait, you're just like
Exactly. You don't care because you don't see anybody that looks like you at the top of those fields.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? If you think about anybody at the top of any field, whether it's science, academia, literature, something like that, who do you see?
Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now what happens when BIPOC communities or BIPOC authors or just people of color in general become successful?
Yo, that shit awesome, dude.
How many banned books by brown people exist in this country?
All of them.
Yeah, right?
All of them.
And why? Because they want to speak on relevant education. Almost entirely, for the most part, these things get... I mean, how many of, like, Maya Angelou's books are just...
I was
you
about to say.
you can't read them in the U.S. Why? Because it's critical of the system. That's almost entirely it. But if you actually read those books, you start to understand that culture is going to be at the base of everything you do in academia. Because they don't tell you about it to begin with. They want you to, just from the get-go, from kindergarten all the way up to college, you want to be... They're going to institutionalize you.
Right.
Your education is centered around being American before anything else. When they don't even tell you that America's on stolen land. They don't tell you... They get into it, right? It's part of U.S. history, quote unquote. Yeah. But they always tell it from the U.S.'s side, right?
I mean, the winners tell the stories.
Exactly.
That's exactly what that
so
is.
what happens to all of the stories about the cultures that they erased along the way? How much do you, anybody listening, how much do you personally know about Native American culture? Outside of what you've seen represented racistly, by the way, through media, through the last 3 decades, 4 decades, the entirety of America. Every time you think of Native American, you think that, what was that? Just like some dude in a giant feather headdress and smoking a cigar, right? Native American people hate that shit.
It's not them.
Because it's, exactly. But that's the education that has been pushed on basically every child in America since America has been, since it started, right? Now, how can you look at school in a modern sense and say that it isn't institutionally racist? When it's just avoiding cultures in general and not wanting to highlight their struggles at all. And for one college in the entirety of the U.S. to actually care, even in the slightest, to have the college, to have the teachers that are willing to teach that curriculum, that says a lot about the current educational system. People don't think about it like that because they think, oh, you need school to be successful in our capitalistic society. And that's pretty much the baseline of it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask y'all, just do you remember asking your white teachers or professors just something, especially in your history class, just hey, what about this? Because when I see the Philippines, I'm just okay, why is there just one small 4-sentence paragraph about the Philippines?
Or when you
out
get
of this 3,000 page book.
Yeah, the textbook, and it's oh, I got a splash page for the Philippines. That's cool.
Yeah.
But the rest of the chapter is about how the U.S. aided the Philippines, quote unquote, in freeing them from Spain, and and it's all about how the U.S. freed, quote unquote, the Philippines. And you're I feel like there's a lot more to this, but okay.
Do you ever? This is what my teachers and everything, when they talk about my white professors and I took AP world history and everything. I remember they saying just talking about the British Empire or something this a good accomplishment. Wait a minute. Now I'm thinking about it, just I remember they just there's always a saying that the sun never set, the sun is always shining on the British Empire, and they said it in such a very verbose and very confident and successful way. I'm just I was just as a 13-year-old, okay, okay. Now I'm just wait a minute, what the fuck, yo, and even during U.S. history and during the civil rights learning civil rights and everything, I was told that the Black Panther Party were just about a bunch of violent villains and everything, when really there are so many programs that the Black Panther Party did in Oakland with everything, with homeless shelters, soup kitchens, litter, building up libraries and everything. It was just why wasn't I told about this? And it was just oh, there's a reason why there's a reason why I glorified MLK when I didn't glorify Malcolm X or Maya Angelou or bell hooks or anybody. It's just wow, why wasn't I never exposed to this until I had to pay for my education?
It's radical was taught to us. Radicalness,
radicalization?
Radicalization, I'm sorry.
Question mark?
Was seen as such a villain. And I think now we're looking at it, and now that we're paying for education, even though it's not even taught to us, but now that I'm older, now that we're older, it's seen as the only way to really make change. Because where would we be? I mean, yeah. Sorry, I lost track.
It's fine.
Ignore me.
No.
I'm gonna finish
that. Yeah, take a breather.
I know. Sometimes I knew this was gonna be a heated episode. I get angry at school.
Oh yeah.
I mean that's another problem too. Why do we make people pay for school, right? And the education we pay for isn't relevant to us at all. And the amount that we have to pay for school almost makes it entirely inaccessible to impoverished communities of color. And that's another reason that these institutions I feel just aren't worth it almost at this point. If you are BIPOC, API, if you're a person of color and you're seeking education, look towards your local cultural centers, anywhere that you can kind of get a grip on your own culture instead of looking towards academia as your only way out. Because at the moment, academia probably doesn't care about your culture. And if you remember anything I said from the last episode, addressing these changes and trying to address change in these institutions starts with understanding where you come from. And that's why I say, despite whatever you want to study, whatever you want to have a career in, root yourself in your culture first. Because if you can give yourself the power of understanding that nobody can take your culture away from you, nobody can erase that, you will take that into your career, and that same mindset will not allow racist institutions to put you down. The second you allow yourself to be in control of your culture, you won't let anybody else be in control of your culture. if school's saying, I want to get rid of ethnic studies, but you realize you're rooted in your culture and you don't want to see that disappear, you're going to fight for it. And it makes it a lot easier to, like, grasp onto, like, grassroots organizing and stuff like that. I never thought I would be in a protest, like, ever. I always thought it was dangerous and kind of dumb. I was like, well, I get it, but it's like, but it wasn't until I realized that they were trying to erase my culture and not teach people about where my people are from, that I was like, that's kind of bullshit. Why wouldn't you? Why? I mean, there are people who want to go out into the world and put their culture at the center of everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you start to realize that just because things are different doesn't mean that they're wrong or scary.
Right.
And if you remember, like I said, talked about last time, the reason fucking oppression exists is the ideology that this one group has to be better and they have to control the other group. And the second that group in control sees that the other group wants to change something, that they're starting to realize that that's wrong, they're just going to try to suppress it as much as possible.
Right, yeah. I feel like with ethnic studies, I was exposed to this amount of just like care for me and like wellness, like building for like in the classroom, not only for me, but within the community of the classroom. But the opposite, Venice, you brought it up during scripting, was just about like zero tolerance policies for like teachers. And when you said, I didn't know what that meant. And like, I looked it up and everything. I was like, what the fuck? Can you also give the definition for that if you have that available? So you go through your notes?
My anxiety refuses without a script. But zero tolerance policies, as defined by the ACLU, is the criminalization of minor infractions of school rules, while cops in schools lead to students being criminalized for behavior that should be handled inside the school. Students of colors are especially vulnerable to push out trends and the discriminatory application of discipline. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
When you see that, I'm just like, okay. And I learn about, like, I remember stuff about high school. It's just like, why were there so many army dudes?
Cops, yep.
Damn cops, security at my high school. I'm just like, oh, I get it. Like, my high school is dangerous and everything. And the students, like, myself as a student just accepted that. I was just like, okay, my high school is dangerous and everything. Just like, but why are we treating it with like such force and everything? And even like not even with like police, like just like actual cops and like military, but like how teachers like have that policing attitude and that power dynamic, and kind of just like whenever students kind of like speaking out or not listening to them, they always yell and everything. And everybody's just like always have this like instance or like knows the memes about teachers and how they're kind of like mean, but it's just like those are teachers that don't understand the wellness of like their students, or there for the check, or there to kind of like reinstitute or reinstate their own power dynamic within themselves to justify their own like sense of self. And that's how it fucked up. And there's so many teachers, so many white teachers that just like do push this like sense of power onto their students of color, and it's so annoying. I even have classmates who want to be teachers, who are white, who still don't check their own privilege and everything, that kind of like portray all that shit. Just like, you're not even gonna listen to your colleagues, you're not even gonna listen to that, you're still going to kind of like bash on ethnic studies and gender studies and everything, and not like call your students by their own pronouns and everything. Like, shout out to Faye. I hope you're doing well. But Faye, our coworker Faye, is working at the school and everything, and they are like teaching their like colleagues about like why you shouldn't call students by their dead names, and just like why you should do this and everything, teaching them about their whole degree and everything. And then when they tell their colleagues about, or what anybody in general about their like gender studies degree, people just make fun of like, wow, that's a useless study, when you're literally as a teacher just like not understanding identities and not understanding your students. What does that say about you? I can pop off for days. For days. That's why I hate academics, because just like success in academia means you are a great professor because it builds yourself up and everything, but some professors in STEM, business, any field of study just like want to boost their own like pedigree, their own resume and everything. Any like wealthy professor doesn't even do like teaching as their primary job and everything. How many like biology classes or just like research classes y'all have been in where like the textbook you're supposed to study for is written by your professor? Seems like a pyramid scheme to me, to be honest.
There's that. Also, the fact that they just probably don't pay that teacher.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially when it comes to, like, what was it talking about? We're on zero tolerance policies.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's familiar with, I'm pretty sure we all had to deal with this with, like, U.S. government. I think it was the Tinker versus Des Moines case, where people wanted to,
What?
Whoa.
Let's see. Wait, I think this will ring a bell once I start talking about it.
Okay.
It's when kids in school wanted to start wearing armbands to protest the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In
This
school.
will always be the conflict with academia, zero tolerance policies, and a school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
There's actually a case going on right now for a high school sophomore cheerleader who's kind of just fed up with school, throws out a tweet, fuck school, fuck this, fuck that, fuck math, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's in school can absolutely vibe. Like, I want to retweet it, right?
Yeah.
The school wants to punish her for off-campus rhetoric that's critical of the school because they feel like it's disruptive of school activity, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court is taking that case up right now, and they're actually having problems with this case because they feel like if they set a precedent, they set a standard that schools can regulate students' speech and language outside of the classroom, now a student has to carry the weight of being societally proper in and out of school. Now, what is that going to do to children who are trying to live their life, trying to be children?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen when they discover their culture and they're critical and they realize they're not happy with the way their school is? But the second they speak out about it online, they lose their scholarship. They get expelled from school. Then what's going to happen?
That can trickle down to work too.
Yeah.
I can't complain about like people at work anymore or my managers at work.
Exactly. I mean,
No.
and that's the problem with like zero tolerance policies and not giving students the space to speak their mind, or like we said, like as far as relating to ethnic studies, actually understand who they are.
Mm-hmm.
If education is seeking to regulate students to a certain type of like being, you're going to create a lot of problems with just children growing up in general. The school to prison pipeline is, if you look anywhere, it's hard to find like solid articles because it's really kind of just a theory for the most part. It's not really a theory once you look at it in like reality. You look at inner city schools, stuff like that, schools that are mostly like minority students.
Yes.
Right? Their education budget is ridiculously low. They don't want to teach their kids about anything, and they have super strict zero tolerance policies about what they can wear to school, what they can say, what they can wear in their bodies, and all of that is, I mean, what is the root of culture? What you wear, how you speak, the music you listen to. If school suppresses all of that, then these kids have no more identity. And what are they there to do? Learn what? Fucking math, but the school says they can't be who they are.
Let's learn about the British Empire. Hell yeah!
And now
Woo!
these kids don't want to go to school because they feel like they're just not being taken care of, stuff like that. And then when they get punished for being who they are, the problem with like the Supreme Court decision right now, and what I forgot, I think it was Sotomayor. She's the woman, Latinx judge on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
She's having a problem with this case because she's saying if we set the precedent that they can do this, then we're just perpetuating and adding to this this power dynamic between students and teachers and the education system that's very authoritarian in nature. You have to listen to the school or you can't get an education. You have to conform or you're not allowed. Like I said, and that's kind of where the school to prison pipeline kind of comes into play. When these kids don't conform, they get punished by the school, right? There's no adjustment, there's no listening to the student, they get punished, they get expelled. Now they don't trust the system. And then they turn to looking at other ways out. They don't finish school, they're going to look at other ways for success. If they don't see that they can be successful through education, they're not going to turn to education. They're not going to turn to business. They're not going to turn to being a quote-unquote functional part of society. You wonder why people end up banding together and worrying about themselves. If you look at just gang culture in general, it's not about like committing crimes and stuff like that. It's about having like a brotherhood, having a family, having
security,
safety, people to look after you because you feel like the world isn't going to.
Yeah.
For the most, and the reason we villainize that is because it's all it is critical of the systems that are in place. Of course they don't trust police. Why would they? You know? Of course they're not going to trust their education board. Why would they? They're not going to trust their government. Why would they? So now these schools feel like they have the right to punish their kids and to an extent almost send them directly to juvenile hall at some point just because they don't want to conform. And I'm just going off. I'm starting to lose my breath. I'm ranting, but I mean, like, that's just part of the problem.
Right. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's so many stuff in place, just implicitly in place, that we don't understand, or that we don't realize that it's put up against us and shit. Mm-hmm. Like I love our talks, Venice, when we talk about academics, because just like you bring up like anger. So much like angry stuff, because just like we're so angry at a system that treats us like
shit.
Exactly.
That dehumanizes us.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
from the eyes of somebody who's in academia,
yes,
actively teaching relevant education to people who are willing to accept that right now.
Yeah.
In your eyes, how do you feel like zero tolerance policies would generally affect, say like in this capacity of teaching?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are things that you would teach that aren't necessarily going to be like okay at like a high school level. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But say we were to introduce certain like, what's the word I'm looking for? Certain narratives of like what's the word I'm talking about? Of ethnic studies. Certain narratives of ethnic studies that are very clearly like erased from like textbooks, basically. Like the things that aren't talked about in our world history classes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got lost in my own question.
I was going to say, where's the
I have another question. You took me on this roller coaster ride. I'm like, all right, okay. Where are we? But I wanted to ask you a question, Vish. Just like as you're currently teaching right now with PACE, how do you flip a zero tolerance policy? How do you what is the inverse of that kind of like promotes wellness within your students? Or
that's what I meant to ask.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
That's a great question. I'm not a legitimate teacher. I am just a peer teaching fellow peers. I wouldn't even say teaching. I would say like leading workshops and just spreading information, if anything. I guess you could say that's teaching. I try to be as... I'm trying to think of a different word for this. Easygoing, in a sense, as possible. I do acknowledge my position as a peer and just try to be as understanding. I listen to people. I listen to the community. I listen to what they want. I ask them what they want in the next workshop and how I could relate that to what my workshops are centered around. And it is my workshops tend to center around decolonization of academia. And so we talk about the zero tolerance policy. We talk about the school to prison pipeline. We try to look at academia as through a critical lens, and kind of unpack the racism within it. And so in order to do that, I personally don't set hard deadlines. It's through Zoom, so I kind of just like tell them to interrupt me whenever, because I don't see shit when I'm sharing screen. Am I answering your question? Is this what you're asking? Okay, word. Sorry.
This is your experience, but there's no wrong answer
Yeah,
here.
I'm just like saying like how I run my workshop. That's what you're asking, right? Is how I run it. I really want them to be given in in the climate that that we're currently in, I try to just not stress them out. Their only homework assignment, at least for my workshop, is literally to hang out with me for like an hour 3 times throughout the entire 10 weeks. And like write like literally like check in with me and get to know like them and like write a reflection on that, and just really I want to focus in on their personal like self growth rather than like an actual like structure, if that makes sense. Because that's like, why would I make them write a 5-page essay when we're pretty much talking about why like shit like that is instated in like words. Whoa.
It's almost as if understanding and applying the knowledge is more important than the deadlines.
Exactly. What? Exactly. Yes, thank you. That's what I meant to say. Pretty much that, yeah. As long as you're understanding it, as long as you're able to verbally talk to me about it, or not even verbally, but as long as like I'm able to see that you're understanding and grasping that information, that's all that's important to me as someone who's trying to pass down knowledge, because that's how I know it's being implied.
Right.
All I want to do is agitate you about the system. I want to pretty much pass down why I'm pissed off and to make you pissed off, so hopefully you can use that in the future to organize or even like spread more information about it and educate others as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh my god. I'm kind of glad that like you're doing that as a Panay. Bless.
Hi.
As a whole ass Panay. Anyways, it had nothing to do with it. I just love empowering my friends. Anyways, I really like wanted to emphasize, shout out to Dr. Duncan Andrade, my professor for my educational equity class, because they've been teaching me like the importance of wellness within the classroom and everything, and how the curriculum caring for students and everything, but also caring for yourself as a teacher, not have like understanding that power dynamic and dismantling that.
Yes. And
because like when you there's this term that they were saying where it was just like, healed students are like medicine to you. Like broken students like can damage you. You can't like punish the broken students by a system that's already like inherently broken. Mm-hmm. You have to take into their consideration their emotions and their thoughts and their well-being into mind when you're teaching and everything. And I hate it when like I'm trying to like focus on this, but like when like teachers just have that same curriculum, just like, let's do it. It worked last year. Let's do it again. No, you have a different set of students. You have a different set of personalities and identities that you need to care for and nourish. And with academia, you're always kind of just like in this pipeline of just like, all right, let's go. Let's graduate. Come on. Next teacher, next student, next year and everything. So you don't have that time with some teachers to kind of develop that like sense of like relationship and sense of growth with that. Mm-hmm. So I feel that it's really good to see like you and other people in core, most likely, and other people. Core is also the like
it's
the board for PACE, basically. Sorry for people who aren't in PACE. Terminology, yes. Try not to like have this centralized and very clicky and everything. If you want to sponsor us, Core, we're here.
What money? SF State not funding us, like I said, not funding their brown.
Anyway,
students.
What was I saying? And it's so important to kind of like, even within the very most radical like left any like party, they're not pushing for reform in academia to focus and shift their attention to wellness. It's still very capitalistic and just like, okay, we want to teach these kids so they can be more like functioning, quote unquote functioning like adults in society, when like their image of functioning adults in society is under capitalism, to be obedient, to be like, to be complicit within like power dynamic to authority. Like, you look at it, just like even the most radically left people don't understand the importance of wellness within academia and everything, and how learning is such a healing like art for most people and everything. And like what's being underfunded right now? Art. Ethnic studies and everything. Literally, I learned this from class. You're welcome, Dr. Andrade, but like there's a biological like it's like that, what is it? Dope, whatever, like dopamine, whatever happy feeling you get. Like
Mhm.
the number one thing that gives you like life would be just like laughing or like art, expressing yourself and everything. What's being underfunded right now? Art.
Mhm.
So it's just
Expression.
expression, and that's literally why we say fuck academics, because just like if you like are obedient, you are a quote unquote good student, you're just like you're not a person to me. I don't I don't care. Like what like whenever I talk to people and everything, oh how's school, and they only talk about school and nothing else, just like this is nothing to me right now. You're not giving me anything.
Yeah.
This is why I give like you shit. I asked how you're doing and you tell me your work. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about your work. I give a fuck about you.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like I don't know other than
I
Aaron's
am.
work. I am work.
Uh-huh.
I am my work. I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize.
Uh,
Never apologize. That's a lot of pressure. We'll talk. But yeah, there's a lot of like, I guess, segue into like segue into stuff. There's a lot of like educational institutions that are just like put
Yeah.
into place that disenfranchise us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of them being like academic or linguistic racism.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to define that.
Oh, weird. I was also gonna bring up like Common Core standards, like that whole one size fit all, because you were just talking about how like, sorry, this isn't the thing.
No, no problem.
I hella forgot to mention it, but I have that one size fit all, like just next person, and it doesn't take into account like the each class is different, each generation will be different, each student will be different.
Mhm.
And you have to take into accountability. Sorry, I just had to mention
I
that.
forgot Common Core was a thing.
Yeah, Common Core.
That was a waste of some classes, honestly.
Honestly, yeah. It plays into what were we talking about? How educational institutions disproportionately affect minorities.
Yeah.
But you wanted me to define. I'm sorry. What?
It was just like academic racism and linguistic racism. A whole ass. You should see this, y'all. Like, literally. I don't know if y'all listen to the podcast, you know how disorganized me and Datu are and everything. And then Venice just like unpacks everything. They printed out the script and everything. They're just like, Jesus Christ.
I'm able to rap better like typing, and so like this is this.
Like, holy crap.
I have the definition.
Very organized.
Mood.
Um.
Should have seen the script I wrote for 4 Eyes of Oppression. I had to hold back because I knew Chris wouldn't read it.
So stupid. Like, I'm bringing it up right now. Hold up. Mid-podcast. What font is this?
Robot Mono.
Robot Mono? I fucking hate you.
Scroll down. This is what happens when I script. I write everything.
That's me. I do that too.
I can't read.
The hell it looks like that. Okay. But yeah, academic racism, linguistic supremacy is pretty much a language ideology that is defined by, or I don't know who this is defined by. Oh shit. Okay, but it's defined as representation, whether explicitly or implicit, that construe intersection of language and human beings in a social world. It's an assumption made about a person's socio-cultural identity, political affiliation, economic status, or other non-linguistic characteristics based solely on the language/dialect they speak. And in terms of like dialect in the US, we're talking about SAE, which is Standard American English, versus
Pomp and circumstance.
which is pretty much the only English, I'm putting air quotes like you can fucking see me, but English that's accepted in academia. And there's the other another dialect called AAV, which is African American Vernacular English, which is under language ideologies is widely incorrectly assumed to be spoken by less educated, less qualified individuals. So yeah, that plays into the whole racism of it, because in academia there's standard, as I just said, Standard American English. So if you're speaking any other way, which is pretty much what I'm using right now, SAE, but if you're speaking in any other dialect, and like we just said, it depends on where you live, where you grow up, for the most part, you're looked down upon, essentially. And so when you go into school, depending on where you go to school in, and you're going in with AAVE, when Black students go in with AAVE, they're looked down upon. When you hear it, people tend to assume that you're less than academically speaking. Yeah.
I feel you on that. I feel like I saw this one TikTok and everything. I'm just gonna say it later. But I saw this one TikTok and everything. There's a bunch where how a lot of like Black people have to code switch to how they talk and how they like express themselves because they're seen as either a threat or just like not educated and everything. So that's why a lot of people have to even myself, I have to code switch how I talk to people, like especially to white people at work, and just like, hey, how you doing, blah blah blah. I don't talk like that. You listen to me, I don't fucking talk like that. That's why when you said in the beginning of the podcast, like, can we curse? Like, fuck yeah, we can curse. What do you mean professional? What the fuck does that even mean? Like, that's just another, like, that's a lot of like syllables for white, to be honest.
Honestly.
Like,
if you don't speak like Captain America, you're wrong. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. Kind of almost an inverse of this. It's kind of something I just like witnessed when I took my like intro to Tagalog class. Filipino people aren't cultured enough. We had a Caucasian male of European descent in the class, right? For those that don't understand how Tagalog or Filipino is structured, it's a very interpretive language. Okay, it's not every word has like a direct translation in English. A lot of these words are actually just meant to serve as expressions because we don't have things like punctuation marks and stuff like that. A lot of that comes through just how you verbalize the sentence and in context.
We are a very expressive group of people.
Yes. Have you ever noticed Filipino people just like to point with all sorts of things on their body instead of actually saying anything?
We hit each other when we laugh.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I forgot when I was going to a white high school. Very.
But I mean, here's like an example.
I'm so sorry. You just like.
Did you just like Jimmy hitting a bunch of white kids?
Yeah.
And they're like, what the fuck? It was funny. What?
I was like, why are you grabbing onto me? It's like, dude, I'm so sorry. This is personal space. I forgot.
It's a lot of repressed memories that you just don't work
Anyways.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Getting back into what I was talking about. He was having the hardest time understanding, like, a phrase. Naman.
Yeah.
Okay? That's very much not really a word. The direct translation is, like, already. Like, get, like, something naman, like, get it done already. Like, now. But you can use it basically in context at the end of, like, any sentence as just, like, an expression to highlight something, like, to make something, like, more intense. Say it's just like when you.
I was like trying to think of also like another like synonym for it. I can't.
You know what I mean?
A little spice.
So
a little spice.
I can't. I swear to God, I had phrases like
hella. Like just think of it like that.
Yeah, it's just like using hella. There's no real direct translation, but you interpret it as like a lot. You know, but you use it as like a descriptor, not as a lot in terms of like actual like English context, right?
Dude, that's hella lit. Literally that.
That's a lot lit, you know? Because when you translate it like that, it just sounds weird, right?
Yeah.
But, for example, like we were talking about, like, linguistic racism, right? How you need to, education tries to conform you to this idea of professionalism and what's supposed to be correct. He was having a hard time and literally kept asking the same question, just like, so what does it translate to? And the teacher said, whatever you want it to be. That's the point. You're supposed to understand it as an interpretive language to be able to use it in context of whatever sentence you're using for expression, not for definition.
Yeah.
There's a big difference, you know, connotative versus definitive meanings. That's kind of just one of those examples of somebody who probably grew up their whole life believing that there was a correct way to speak.
Yeah.
Not really. If you look at most other cultures, you try to translate their syntax back into English, it won't make any sense at all. But the second you actually learn that language, same with so Spanish is like the second or third most like widely spoken language in the U.S., right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you learn Spanish, you're taught, at least when I learned Spanish, oh, so their descriptors are backwards. The way they speak is backwards to English. So you describe your nouns with the word on the wrong side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
You know? It's not well, where did all my Spanish go?
Por ejemplo.
Por ejemplo.
Why you say it?
You know, I'm sure if like you for like the big ass majority of people who probably took Spanish in high school, like I said, they probably told you your adjectives like come after the fucking noun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of before. Whereas in English, you go, it's a red car. But if you translate that same sentence in Spanish, it's car red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they tell you that it's backwards or it's wrong or however they try to imply it, you know?
I realized like when I learn more languages and everything, or learn like another language, there's room for me to understand like, hey, like even though this is like textbook, this is not how people speak. I'm reminded that this is not how like people speak in Spanish usually when learning Spanish. And just like there's never room for that in English or in like Eurocentric classes and everything. It's just like, hey, there's a lot of control based and everything, and anything outside of what that they control, that's just like that's wrong. I mean, I get it for math, duh, but for like English, it's very just, why do I have to be in English for like all of my years in school? I speak it. Like, why is it not correct? And oh, it's not verbose, it's not like professional and everything. So like, okay, that's not me though.
And especially for people who aren't native English speakers, who don't speak English as a first language, this is where this problem is like apparent the most. At least I feel. When you have to learn a curriculum that isn't even translated into your language, like even though Spanish is like I said, like one of the most widely spoken foreign languages in the U.S., good luck finding a specific textbook retranslated into Spanish.
Hell yeah.
You have to learn it in English. And good luck finding a teacher that will teach it to you in Spanish. No, you're expected to learn English and understand it in English. And again, that's one of those problems Venice was talking about. Like, it's a standard essay. It's literally a standard.
Do y'all talk like how you type in essays?
Absolutely not.
I don't. I think I started like inputting like my own like way of like speaking in my essays in like my ethnic studies and sexualities classes, and look what happened. I'm getting good grades in that shit because oh shit, I'm actually like enjoying writing that way because that's how I actually talk. And I get like certain standards and citations. I get that, but why the fuck is there a whole ass format of how I should speak? Like that's literally the purpose of like writing an essay or expressing your. It's like way where you can connect to the author and also understand like where their like sense of you can like understand a sense of person's background just by how they speak. It's not a bad thing. It's beautiful, in fact. But I hate like when doing reading and everything. It's so difficult for me to just follow along like a 30-page reading. First 30 pages. What the fuck? Anybody got time for that? What the hell? But like how they talk is not very interesting. It's not very grabbing because it's not how I talk. I don't see myself. I see a white man talking. I don't want to listen to a white man talking to me. What the heck? Why do you talk like this and everything? And it's why I hate like academia's like like very like high like standard echelons of academia, because like there's no sense of like individuality within that. Yes, your like studies can do that, but like how you talk and how you express yourself, how you like talk to your colleagues, how you carry yourself, and how you navigate within your research and your field of study, there is no sense of expression, no sense of thing. There's just a lot of standard shit that I cannot follow as a person of color who's trying to be real with the fucking shit.
Because you're spending more time trying to adjust yourself to the standard instead of actually
I'm trying to translate right now. I'm like, this is the same language we're speaking. Just like very, like, relative language is very important. Even if you speak in the same exact language, it might be relevant to them. It's not relevant to the people that you're trying to teach. And that's why a lot of, like, professors, I can, like, they're probably teaching a dope-ass class, but they're probably teaching it very, like, still academically, like, charged. Everything. That's why some like ethics studies courses are very kind of like, I understand it. It's kind of like transition from like people like being exposed to this like certain curriculum for so long that you kind of have to like be familiarized. But like, yo, stop with this stupid professional shit. What does that even mean? What does it even mean to be professional?
To act white, to act like a standard
Basically,
old
like,
rich white man.
Mhm.
that's why like
Welcome to high society.
that's why the lack of understanding
Wall
and
Street.
empathy with like curriculums and ethics studies in certain curriculums is so like important, because just like, yo, you're not going to cater to who's actually wanting to go to school and shit. Like, why is that? Why does Harvard throughout this whole like existence still white, still very everything?
Doesn't have one tenured professor of color.
For real?
They're all white.
Oh shit, for real?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought that's really
I
fun.
thought, wow,
Yes.
not even one.
Not even
One token one? Come on, man.
You
Wow.
would think maybe by now. I read that statistic a couple months ago, but we'll see.
Whoa!
Crazy, right? You go to Harvard, considered one of the best institutions in the world. That's just how you see the standard. It's the best because it's literally one of the whitest in the world.
Oh, here we are.
It's kind of scary. It's
Ivy
terrifying.
League. Poison Ivy League.
Poison Ivy League.
It's
It's terrifying because it's also the people that tend to go to Harvard tend to end up in the highest, quote unquote, highest positions.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the government. And they're being taught by white people, and it's just white people teaching white people, and it's just.
Remember Obama
white
went to an Ivy League school and everybody wanted to completely ignore that fact?
What he did?
Yes, he
Oh.
did.
I don't
Didn't
pay.
go to,
I don't
Harvard.
pay.
It wasn't Harvard. It was another one, but
Princeton, Yale.
it was
Holy Trinity.
all I know. It was,
These are white people last names. I'm just saying.
my problem is the second that it's a person of color, regardless of the academic institution they came from, they didn't care.
Right.
But Mr. Trump's like, oh, I went to an Ivy League school. He put it at the forefront of his fucking big brain. He was like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. I went to college. You paid to go to college. You had somebody write your essays.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like this could be a whole other episode, but it's just like how people talk about like representation is like the first. I can't even say it with a straight face. It's just like representation is like the number one problem in like Asian American communities. No, it's just it's what the fuck.
It's really
People like
fucking
really
not.
like fight for representation, but they're people who represent you who like move like colonizers too. Shout out to Ruby Ibarra and Titty Pop by Bamboo. Literally,
lyrics.
there's so many
Say
like
that shit.
even like I have experience with these like white teachers and everything. There's also like Filipino teachers who treated me like shit.
Oh,
who,
yeah.
like, were very just like even Asian teachers and everything who like out like I was talking to my friend Eliza. Shout out to Eliza if you're listening to this, but like we were talking about our old math teacher. Just gonna call her by name. They're not gonna fucking listen to this. Miss Nguyen and everything. And I told them
anybody.
yeah, it could be anybody. Anyways, but like Mr. Nguyen, I remember like very fondly the class because like she paid attention to me and everything because I was performing well in that class. But when I talked to Eliza about her experience in that class, Miss Nguyen treated her like shit because it was hard for her to like keep up with like a lot of like the work sometimes. Apparently, Eliza's older sister also had Miss Nguyen, and Miss Nguyen didn't like Eliza's older sister, and then like there's that power dynamic where it's just like, oh, you are doing badly in this. I don't care about like you don't really give me joy and shit. It's just like, what the fuck? There's no care in the world for students. It's just like just because they're not passing your class doesn't mean they like aren't human and shit. They should still be treated like that, and that's why like. Even though ethnic studies is great, there's some people in like ethnic studies who teach that are still like I don't think you get that. Even me, like about like what a year ago when I was teaching in PACE and everything was like, oh, I'm still not with it yet. If I had a time machine, I would kick myself in the face and destroy it because I don't want to fuck with a time machine if I accidentally go to like the 1920s. But yeah, there's just like things that you have to understand that like you need to focus. Just because you're a person of color doesn't mean that doesn't exempt you from acting like a colonizer. That's that colonial mentality that you can still portray.
Yeah.
It's not just the teachers. I mean,
It's a whole mindset and everything.
Yeah, because I mean, just think about your own parents. How much pressure do they put on you to continue school and to get an education that you don't care about?
Oh yeah, especially like a child of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
Like they like, I'm reminded like I left my whole life so I can have you get a better life. I'm like I can't be a broke motherfucker. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that translates back into like how you carry yourself through academia.
Mm-hmm.
Already, minority children are carrying with them the pressure, probably most likely, of their parents not having finished school, something like that. They probably receive a lot of pressure. Why is it such like an accomplishment? Why is it so inspiring for a person of color to graduate? Why isn't that normalized?
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't it normal for people of color to graduate? Why isn't it normal to become educated, like highly educated people? Because the system doesn't want them to be.
Exactly.
Because you can't, and if you're like, oh, it's bullshit. It's just academia. Nobody's racist. This and that. Blah blah blah. It's like, no, like I said, these kids already have to worry about being the first person in their family to be quote unquote successful.
Right.
Right. So they're already carrying with them the pressure of, I have to do this for my family. And then now they're being told, now you have to be American in order to do this for your family. You have to abandon everything that you centered your culture around so that you can be successful. Right? Now you just start to lose them. You need to remember, we're teaching children.
Right.
Up to now, I'm still formulating my fucking brain, you know? It's like, everything that you teach me between kindergarten and now is going to impact me for the rest of my life. And my mindset almost entirely for the rest of my life. If I feel like school was never like a proper place for me, I won't even want to send my kids to school. And then what am I supposed to do if society continues to say that they can't be successful without school? Right.
I feel like I told you this like earlier, but like there's, I don't know if you learned this, but pretty much everybody learned this about like growth mindset and fixed mindsets. How your teachers told us you should have a growth mindset in learning and everything because it creates better learning outcomes. I forgot. I also took like just like learned this yesterday through my class and everything, but like the actual research, I forgot the person's name. Whatever quote everything, but the actual research for growth mindsets and fixed mindsets were actually supposed to be geared towards teachers. If a teacher does not have a growth mindset, then your students won't be learning. If your teacher is obviously a fixed mindset and your students are portraying a fixed mindset, that has to do something with the teacher. And it's just that lack of just understanding about that relationship and how like a teacher should also be learning alongside their students is just like crazy. And I've only seen that in ethnic studies. And I kind of just wanted to say that briefly before we kind of like segue into kind of like the erasure of like certain narratives with ethnic studies. But like, there's so many like teachers that like still think, yes, I have these credentials, I am tenured, I deserve all this.
Just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you know everything. End of this, basically.
Some people can't even set up a Zoom call. Fuck. Shit. Yeah, segue into this. I wanted to like ask y'all, what was like the first instance of like, how do I say this? What was it? After learning about ethnic studies and everything, what was like a light bulb, like flashbulb memory that you remember in school that you remember teaching that you thought like, wait a minute, that wasn't bad at all, that you were taught was bad? Like an example, what we talked about was like about the Black Panther Party and everything. Or like, that wasn't so great at all about like colonization and shit. I remember fucking colonization was taught as a game.
Oh my god, yeah! Oh my gosh, the whole Western expansion. I remember that
and everything.
too.
I remember just like everybody puts a quiz and everything. The person with the highest points with the quizzes gets more points to claim land.
Yo.
There was strategy. You know about how many fucking board games?
I played that.
Of like we play of just like
You want to know how I learned about Manifest Destiny in elementary school?
Oh god.
What?
We have a giant map of the U.S.
Oh god.
in the quad.
Mm-hmm.
We brought our class out to the quad. We started in the east, 13 colonies.
Jesus Christ.
And it's just like, all right, so now you're all concentrated. We need to spread out as evenly as possible across all 50 states. And that's how they ingrained Manifest Destiny into us as children.
That's
As a fun
crazy.
game.
It's that perspective that you mentioned, Venice, when scripting. Was just like the erasure of certain narratives within like learning about certain perspectives. Just like, wow, we really just like talked about just like a white perspective, and that's why it's
Yeah.
important now about how like there's an erasure of like narratives right now,
Mhm.
and I'm just learning about different fucking games that I learned about colonization and shit. I literally have board games called Catan, which is just colonization of resources, Risk, which is that same game that Clark mentioned.
With military.
Why is every board game about freaking like border border rules and
Border
everything?
control.
Yeah, basically.
US is so
I can
militarized.
fuck- Exactly.
Capitalism is so militarized.
Exactly.
That's why. But yeah, I think one of the first things, if not the first even, when I got to college, was, like you said, native erasure. Was, holy shit, wait, missions? Like, if you're not from California, we're both y'all, did we all go to school in California?
Did you all
Yeah,
make
yeah.
missions in
Yeah.
5th grade?
Oh
Why the hell did we try to make those so pretty? That's what I'm trying to bring up.
Okay. Let me tell you all a story. Like 3rd, 4th grade and everything, I was just like, there's a lot of projects and everything. You can go to the bathroom, Clark. You're excused from the class. You don't have to ask the teacher for permission.
I need your permission.
Wow, I fucking love it. I'm gonna just leave it to Clark. Well, hold up. We'll mute this for now. Okay, quick bathroom break. Now we're back. This is a long podcast, but good.
Mhm.
Good job.
Okay.
Okay, you're popping off on missions, Venice?
Oh, right. Why? Okay. we what were we even fucking taught about missions? Let's be real, like, other than the fact, like, no one really went into the history of it. We were all very much focused on the architecture and the art.
I remember being told it's like, oh, there are these beautiful buildings, blah blah blah, this and that. They came from like
Mm-hmm.
when like Spanish missionaries came to California and they wanted to spread Catholicism everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn until later how many fucking people they murdered along the way.
To constitute as an entire genocide, by the UN a few years ago, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it's still going on.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Notes.
I'm prepared
I have
to
the
not.
actual. I think I have the actual.
This
number.
is why we have guests, because we don't know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and within 27 years, the thing is, this margin of error is so huge, but it's 9,500 to 16,100 indigenous folks were murdered. Within
For-
27 years.
For Catholicism.
For Catholicism. For two.
I did the name the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit dab. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I was just like, yeah. I was just, anyways. Yeah, for Catholicism to grab the land, even. And it's, yes, it was more than that too, though. It was more than just spreading the knowledge or spreading Catholicism. It was land grabbing. They did so much just to spread their religion, and for what? To take the land. They had they had native communities entirely exterminated. In terms of, they exterminated their food sources to the point where California missions and only living within those missions and learning about Catholicism was your only way of survival. And it was state sanctioned as well. It was funded by the U.S. government at the time. It was funded by hella people.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Fucking erase that now. Oh my god. I'm actually learning about this whole like genocide right now as we speak right now. So now I'm just like.
Also, it was the blueprint for. Can we talk about how it's the blueprint for the Holocaust? This is where many of the leaders of the Holocaust got it. And I feel like the U.S. is always like, yeah, we came in during World War II to like save the Jewish people, but it's
because
like,
we knew how it worked.
Exactly.
Oh, it's like, I know how to fight this.
These extermination, like it was the blueprint for it. Germans got it from the native genocide.
Hitler's carrying a little
Literally.
Catholic Bible.
Little notes.
America.
Look to
17.
Wow, it's almost as if relevant education doesn't actually come from our like institutions.
Yeah.
I
have to learn about this somewhere else.
It's kind of crazy how like everywhere, like especially in Europe, everybody kind of just like pressures Germany to like understand their history. But when like everybody talks about British colonization, people just like, oh, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What you talking about, huh?
You're gonna deny you turned almost the entirety of India into a trading colony? Well, it happened, but I'm not gonna say how bad
They're
it happened.
still like experiencing the implications of that today. Literally, so many people are dying because of the lack of vaccines and everything, just because of how like ingrained like the market system is because of like British colonization. It's crazy.
You think they got the idea of a caste system from themselves? No.
It's like the U.S. and Hawaii right now, and Guam. And Puerto Rico.
We're
US
gonna claim
colonies,
you.
yo.
Current colonies right now. We're gonna claim you as U.S. land.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry.
not give you voting rights in this.
No, you know what's even crazier? When you are U.S. territory and you have voting rights, but no representation in government.
That's crazy.
Oh, Guam, Puerto Rico, yeah, you can vote, but you don't have representatives for your states.
Literally, the Marshall Islands are just like fucking like middle grounds of like territories and everything. Just like if you're not gonna like give them resources, just fucking emancipate that fucking land to the native people.
And
exactly.
Even on like a less indigenous note, Washington D.C. is trying to seek statehood right now. It's
a word.
They don't want to. They literally don't want to give Washington D.C. statehood because everybody in Washington D.C. can vote. They don't have a representative in government.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. It's the capital, right? But guess what? Guess what a majority of the population demographic is in Washington, D.C.? People of color.
It's called the Chocolate City. They don't make chocolate there.
I didn't know this at all.
Literally,
this is interesting.
It's called the Chocolate City, and it's because it's made by the backs of black people in their community and everything. But all like during, I just watched a bunch of Dave Chappelle. That's why I know all this shit. But during the crack epidemic, like DC was very like torn up with all that within like their like neighborhoods and everything. After all that, now it's just like a bunch of like white people trying to gentrify that area and trying to like claim it for themselves and everything. But just really, DC is a like from as long as I don't really know as much, but like for a long ass time now, it has been a predominantly like black community in Black City.
Yep.
But it's not treated as such, and it's like they don't want to give that fucking statehood. That's a lot of power to them.
TLDR, even outside of taking native land, it goes even further. Our own capital of this fucking country still refuses to acknowledge the actual cultures and populations and demographics that exist and are not represented at all by this government or the institutions that surround it. The fucking home place of our entire capital is being like chokeholded by like a small minority group of super white Republicans, right? It's why our government can't get anything done. They're the only ones that complain about DC getting statehood. You ask most of the Democrats, they're like, makes sense to me. You ask most people on the side of accepting cultures as truth, you know, they're gonna be like, yeah, all of this absolutely makes sense. The only time this doesn't make sense is if you're on the other side of the argument and you feel like, oh no, that's not okay because you're just trying to gain power, blah blah blah, this and that. They're just scared of losing control, right? Was the 1619 project or whatever?
Yeah.
Like that, they're trying to pass that as like a curriculum for schools.
Yeah.
And every Republican up and down was like, you're just rewriting history, blah blah blah. You're trying to teach our kids. No, you did that first. We're trying to teach them the right history. They're supposed to know that America is stolen land.
It's like literally like, I don't know why, I just have a flashbulb memory of this white like classmate who we were playing tag with, and all of a sudden like they're like, why are you playing it like this, dude? Why are you playing tag like? No. Shout out to Paul. I don't know where the fuck you are right now, but you play Uno like a piece of shit. Nobody fucking places 5 cards in one turn, you dumb fuck. And like all of a sudden when people like play by your rules, it's like, no, that's not fair, let's revert back. Like, okay, I have a lot of trauma from Uno. But this is just an example of just like people just like who have like a sense of like power and privilege or like a very like power complex and want to like have control. When they don't have control, they call bullshit or don't like call the game fun or whatever. It's just like I treat that analogy like of my experience as kids as right now in politics right now because that's what's happening. That is what's happening. And
like if anybody doesn't believe it, I just please watch anything that happened in politics for the last like decade. The second somebody wants to talk about race, culture, this and that, well, you're just trying to pack blah blah blah, you're just trying to virtue signal blah blah blah. It's just like, or somebody's trying to have a legitimate conversation with you about the need for proper representation and understanding of cultures in a country where we literally just destroyed like a demographic and don't even want to talk about giving them their land back. We don't want to talk about giving African American descendants reparations because the people in power are in just such denial for whatever reason about the truth
because they're fed that narrative
country
that we were taught.
Exactly.
Because it was relevant to them.
Because it's almost as if relevant education actually empowers the people that want to seek that information.
And that when relevant education is fucking violent and everything, it empowers the violence within people.
Yeah.
I.e. this whole year. This whole past 2 years. But yeah.
You wonder why people go out and protest in such massive numbers. And it's just like, well, because you think tens of thousands of people are wrong.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, somebody could flip that and be like, oh, do you think Hitler believed he was wrong? No, of course not. But when you get called out and you still actively ignore the conversation, you are wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Just if you are willing to grow and understand, that's a lot better, you know?
Well, I kind of want to pop off on Third World Liberation Front, or TWLF, which is a, like...
This is that fight we were talking about for the
Venice, if you want to pop off on that.
The Third World Liberation Front of 1960.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot like
You're
that.
good. Of 1967 to 1969, the largest student-held strike in U.S. history, led by San Francisco State University or at the time San Francisco State College students, mainly led by the first Black Student Union, supported by the TWLF, consisting of many other ethnic students.
She got a script.
I literally just pulled out the script. I can't even remember
from her dome.
From her dome. After hearing it a million times. Sorry, my first 2 years at SF State were literally the TWLF 50th anniversary celebrations. Pretty much the demands for an ethnic studies. The demands included admitting more students of color, admitting or hiring more faculty of color, as amongst other demands. Yeah.
Don't look at me. I asked you for clarification. But yeah, I kind of wanted to emphasize that because yes, SS State is the first college that needs studies, but like you said, Clark and Venice, we had to fight for that.
Oh. We
had to fight, like...
For 2 years.
Like, for 2 years. Like, straight and everything. 50 years and everything was cut in 2016, or I think studies was cut back in 2016, or trying to be cut in 2016, and then, like, TWF just, like, modern TWF just try to, like, no, like, protest for that. Why do we have to protest for just, like, stuff that we want? Like,
yeah.
That's crazy. And it's, like, you're fine. And it's not, like, harmful to, like, well, it's harmful to white supremacy. I guess why that's why they fucking, like, want to cut it as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's almost as if education and white supremacy isn't interlocked in the same system.
Oh, word?
Oh,
didn't know that.
Well, damn.
Yeah, that's why there's
Please refer back to episodes 3 and 4.
Or all of them, honestly. Yeah, there's constant cuts to that. Back in, like, fall of 20... When did you do internship, Venice?
Fall 2019.
Fall 2019. Shut up. The CSU tried to, like, cut back, like, ethnic studies right now. see what happening CCSF is right now. It's just like it's still currently going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like we're trying to develop this study and also fight for its existence right now.
Mhm.
And that's literally how people like BIPOC individuals and communities are right now. We're literally trying to develop ourselves and like self-actualize ourselves within this fucking racist ass country, but we're also trying to survive and not be killed.
Yes.
Literally, like, the study reflects the people that it's geared for. And
Mhm.
it's really why that's important, because without, you heard our experience, without that, it's, you can just get, like, we're just dead.
Yeah.
Without without knowledge and education as a weapon, I'm glad you pointed out, we're not, like, geared to, like, you're the one that said this, Manish, but we're not able to kind of, like, arm ourselves in, like, white spaces.
Yes.
Not, like, actually arm ourselves. Like, we're not...
With knowledge. Knowledge is power.
we're not fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Weird ass people.
Knowledge buys me a Lamborghini. Anyways. I loved that meme. That was a funny... Knowledge.
You get 1,000 in Dogecoin, you think you're all shit right now,
Sheesh!
huh? Why did we say that? Why did we fucking say that?
Oh my fucking god!
My pronouns are she. She what? Sheesh!
Okay.
But yeah, that's why it's also important, because just like it's also relevant, but also I wanted to preface how affordable college is also important.
Yes.
Why CCSF, and that's like a continuous fight right now, and like so prominent right now, because CCSF offers free college for all SF residents,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why so many people are showing up in arms and everything, because just like, yo, you're cutting the lifeblood of this city, the lifeblood of the education of this city. This little SF, like little liberal wonderland, liberal Disneyland, and everything is being like cut by like the people in power.
And just to give people kind of an idea of how widespread and like impactful ethnic study cuts to CCSF would be, CCSF has something like 3 or 4 actual campuses throughout the entire city. So there's one downtown, there's one in the Mission, there's one on Ocean. I think they have another one that they use as like for like shop services for like trade programs.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and I just went to recently to an action to, again, this is all related to the class cuts. So the campus in the Mission, predominantly Latin community out there, right? You cut cultural. One of the speakers there was talking about how this cheap, now free, currently at the moment, education was absolutely their like key to success in San Francisco. To be able to get to the point where they were, they wouldn't have been able to do it without actually being able to get the education that they needed. And that goes for just the entirety of like these ethnic studies at a community level. It's a community college. Emphasis on community. CCSF made a really big point to have these satellite campuses to specifically serve those communities. The Mission campus is absolutely adorned with murals and Latin artwork and stuff like that, because they understand that culture and community is going to be an important centerpiece of education.
I remember getting not vaccinated, getting tested at the Bayview campus and everything. There's so many I never seen so many photos of just black artists, activists, and everything. It was just that is. I felt powerful getting a fucking nasal swab right now. Just are you tearing up right now? No, it's because of all this power, all of this representation.
And the same goes for all these other campuses. But nobody's protesting at the business campus downtown, because those classes aren't getting cut. The Mission campus, the Ocean campus, and even the Evans building, which is the trade campus, basically. Every single one of those campuses, my teachers, I've had a teacher in pretty much every single one of those campuses. They're upset. The amount of classes that I've taken where my teacher says, hey, we're going to be talking to the board. It'd be really helpful if you could lend student voices to say how upset you are about removing class space, removing shop space, removing classes and teachers. Like I said, today, right now, CCSF is holding their like their talk with like the board right now, but they
Right.
want to talk about the one that they're talking about right now, centered on saving Philippine studies. They're scrubbing that curriculum entirely because there's one teacher that teaches it all, and she's on that pink slip list,
Oh.
right?
That's crazy.
And I always felt like this was the problem. The reason I loved the fact that City College was free is because, again, the affordability of college.
Right.
Just to break it down, one semester at San Francisco State is over $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make $3,000
As a full-time student?
as a full-time student. No. How am I supposed to do that? Now I have to rely on grants and loans, and I have to owe the government money.
Did y'all know paying back your loans actually decreases your credit score?
Word?
Yeah, word. That makes no sense. You're paying off your debt? Alright, you're being punished for it. Also, what is credit? That's only exists in America.
We really just weren't given a
It's,
chance.
again, it's another one of those just roadblocks, especially to minority communities. It's just the affordability of college. And that was something I always disagreed with growing up. That was before I moved to San Francisco. Because it's like, again, that pressure is just like, you got to go to college. Like, go somewhere in California because it's cheap. We can afford it. Or because my dad was in the Navy, so I get benefits that way. That's just my privilege to do so. But when I realized I wasn't getting the education I wanted, I kind of dropped out of school. I lost those benefits. And then I was like, now I'm really on my own as far as getting an education.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's me coming from a place of privilege. Anybody with any amount of money less than me is absolutely going to struggle to get a higher education because it's simply not affordable.
Mhm.
And then City was like, "Oh, we're gonna try out free classes." I could not believe how much I could actually learn for essentially free. I only pay like maybe $20 to $30 in student fees a semester.
Mhm.
I can get whole ass associate's degrees in like psychology, business, bunch of STEM majors, stuff like that. I can get associate's transfers for like nursing and medical fields, which is, again, they're cutting nursing from CCSF.
Mhm.
How ridiculous is that? They don't even want to go into medicine. They care more about business and STEM majors and funding their their administration, because at the end of the day, all of your most of your universities are run like businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They care more about the money going in and out, and they don't really see students as students and people willing to learn. They see numbers.
Yeah.
And if they're not getting the numbers that they want, they're going to start cutting out things. They're going to be like, oh, we're not getting enough. I'm in an automotive mechanics class right now, right? And they straight up told us, please register with the class. Invite your friends to register for the class, because if we don't have enough, they won't let us have the class. We need to have a minimum
Right.
to have, and that's why we get into problems with like over stuffing classrooms and stuff. It's like, how is one teacher supposed to teach 30 students versus one teacher more effectively teaching 15 students? You know what I mean? Because again, these institutions care more about packing numbers in because they know, oh, these people, they have to pay money, or they got to get grants and loans, stuff like that. And all of that stuff only benefits the schools and the institutions. None of this is for the benefit of the students.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much did you have to pay in student fees through the pandemic?
Oh, not the same as I did when I was on campus. Over $3,000.
Even more, actually. Even more.
I got like a $20 check.
So yeah, right? Get this. We're in a pandemic. We all have to learn from home. They're still going to charge you for student fees, quote unquote, even if you have
They ain't paying for my internet bill.
fine aid, blah, blah,
What the
blah,
fuck?
this and that.
And they still cut staff.
My partner, she can go to fucking, she got like her summer classes, she got financial aid for summer classes, right? She didn't have to pay the full $3,000 for the 3-month program,
Jesus.
right?
Yeah.
That's still all online, by the way. So there are people who are paying a full $3,000 for those classes.
Mhm.
She still has to pay $300 in student fees. For what facilities? The teachers aren't even using those facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
No, the school's just taking money from you and throwing them into the pockets of administration.
Convenience charge.
Mm-hmm.
Convenient way to whip us off.
And that's why something like CCSF is really important to have, and to make sure that the education that's provided in CCSF, like community colleges, is relevant and helps people get to the places in society that they want to be. Because if we're not educating properly, we're just repressing everything else.
Right. I wanted to ask both of y'all. What was it? In high school, when you're trying to look for like a college and everything, like trauma. But what was like one thing your parents pushed you to do to like make sure to like factor in?
Money.
Money.
And like what was like the thing that was like denied access to you basically just because of that money?
Education.
Hell yeah. Like I wanted to go to, I don't know why. I wanted to go to UC Davis and everything. It's just like, oh, blah, 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 stigmas of going to like a higher education school and everything. Pressures of like a fucking AAPI family. But when you're not, why is this through a paywall? That's like having a paywall in a video game. Like why am I like barred from learning about like shit like that from like higher education? That why is education not right and everything, and that's why this whole mindset of like having education as a business is so fucked up. And
what doesn't make sense to me is how readily available information is today.
Right. So
gatekeeping a proper education, I feel like, is counterintuitive and is only going to create more problems, because now you're gonna everybody's exposed already to the internet. So you can get information on anything you want. Education at this point should just be structuring that and making sure that the right information is coming out. The correct, the truthful information about whatever you're trying to learn. There are people who do entire like YouTube series and documentaries from... Here's the thing. You can go to school and have a teacher tell you all about this, or you could learn how to use an educational database to find citable articles on the exact thing you're learning for free today.
Education connected. For free. Get connected for free. For me.
But like, so again, it kind of begs the question: why do colleges need to take all this money from students, and they're not even going to pay? And you can't even say it's for the teachers' bubble, because they're not paying their teachers.
It wasn't like this in the past. It wasn't like this in the 60s, 70s.
What was it like?
It was like very affordable. Like the prices of like a college now has been like rising exponentially, especially for our generation. Yeah. Like our parents' generation, even though our parents probably didn't grow up in like the state and everything, but like that generation of students and everything didn't really have to pay for as much for education as we are right now.
Yeah, I remember like actually one of my teachers in high school talking about, he went to Berkeley in like around that time, I don't fucking know, but he was like talking about like how he was paying like a solid like few $100s, maybe even less.
What?
And
I pay a few $100s for the service fee.
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude.
You know what else happened in the 60s and 70s?
Racism. That's still going on.
Yeah, still going on.
Well, I like to think of it as the fact that because college was so affordable back then, there was probably a lot more minorities educated, which probably empowered a lot more people to join things like the civil rights movement.
I see it.
That might play into why school's more expensive now.
Damn, big brain. That's some.
Just saying.
That realization.
That's some brown way.
Because it's like, I wonder why college got more expensive after everybody was able to use it before. Oh.
Honestly, any of the bad stuff that like this is why like I love like listening to Dave Chappelle, even though they just talk the shit. But like, isn't it interesting how like there's an epidemic, like a disease that only kills like black people, gays, and like drug users? Why did the AIDS epidemic only affect those people that like only old white people hated? Damn.
I don't know, just like I said, and that's why relevant education is important. Tying it all back, fuck academia.
That's a conspiracy theory.
And look, and that was mostly speculation on my part. But, I mean, if you think about it realistically, okay, why was the civil rights movement as big as it was? Because people knew what the fucking problem was, and they weren't afraid to say it. How many people are you gonna get? How many people nowadays, even with the expanse of the internet, can you actually get behind you on what you're talking about? There's so much stuff available now that you don't even know what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And now American education is like, oh, ignore all of that. Everybody's just the 1619 Project. That's bullshit.
I feel like TikTok has radicalized so many people. Like, honestly, my For You page is just literally just, like, talking about gender and just, like, dismantling shit. It's just like, yeah. And I look and I'm just like, wow, there's so many people just, like, y'all probably have the same For You pages. And I'm like, there's so, like, this algorithm is pointing in our favor.
I'll script the episode on social media and the problems with that too, but don't worry. It's good. I think the internet's good for getting word out. The problem is, like I said, making sure we get the right information out.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying get your education from TikTok. Use it as, like, a stepping stone into discovering
It's
information,
a good base, yeah.
but not as the gospel truth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Make sure you look into your sources, what people are talking about. Like I said, educational databases, scientific papers, you don't have to pay for those. If, like, say, like, I saw something, I was like, I saw this off of TikTok.
Wow.
You don't have to pay science magazines and subscriptions to access data. So you know how, like, scientists will write papers and stuff on their findings and stuff? Mm-hmm. That's publicly accessible information. You could literally just contact that professor and ask them to see the data because you're trying to prove the same thing. You don't have to pay like scientific papers and stuff that distribute these papers that you pay subscription fees for. That's just them asking money for access. No, that's information you can just ask for free. Same thing with like just public libraries in general.
Right.
That's literally their whole point, is that you can find citable, truthful sources that aren't opinionated, that aren't the news, that aren't media. It's that easy to find. It's right there.
Period.
Anyways.
Right. This is like our longest episode. Period.
Oh, word.
Because fuck academia.
Honest, this could be like a part 2 on this. But anyways.
It's possible.
Possible. Venice?
Yes,
yeah, sorry. But I wanted to, like, before we go into, like, ending off, like, advice and everything for anybody, I want to ask both of y'all, why relevant education? Venice, you can go first if you want, since you are a guest of honor. Oh, guest of honor.
That's the question. Why relevant?
Yeah, why relevant education?
Why non-relevant education is really the question. Why the hell would you learn about shit that you're not going to use? Why the hell would you learn about shit that doesn't add to you as a person? Why ethnic studies? Because it teaches us about no history, no self. You learn about yourself. Like, I'm so sorry, like, that's such an overplayed, like, term. I know, like, I saw Chris's face, but, like, it's a solid phrase. You know what I'm saying? I can get it.
Keep going.
Yeah. I got nervous. Holy shit. Relevancy, I feel, is also subjective. You can interpret relevancy in so many other ways. In terms of what we're talking about here, why, in terms of relevant to BIPOC, to students of color, it empowers us to show us how the hell we've been treated wrong and how to fight how we're still continued to be treated. Because the system isn't broken. It was never built for us to begin with. So it's to kind of dismantle that system and create one for ourselves. To kind of center ourselves in our community, in our history, in... I don't want to use the term radicalization. Because it's not always that. But to kind of just... kind of create some sort of safety net for us. Mm-hmm. To kind of, like what y'all were saying, ground yourself in history, ground yourself in community. Sorry, I'm having such a difficult time.
You're fine.
Trying to think, why relevant education?
Why not?
Why not? Really? Like, why the hell would you, like I said, like, why did I learn so much about algebra when I'm a fucking Becca major? Like, I'm literally not using it. I don't know my times tables. Yesterday, someone asked me, what's 8 times 4? Shit. Like, I have no fucking clue, because I haven't used that information in years. Like, why was that, why did learning the times table back in elementary school so traumatic for me? Like, when I don't even use it, so like, but now I'm traumatized, so it's, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I like patted my ego, like doing that hella fast and shit. I was competing
36?
against like, yeah.
Let's go. I still
got to
remember
double
from
Y
yesterday.
on my. I don't know if y'all did that too, but like I think was it like 3rd grade where we had to start learning multiplication or something like that.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
So the way my school did it was just like, oh, so you went like up, you just kept progressively getting more like A through Z, like tests A through Z were like basic multiplication. Then you went to like double A to double Z, and then triple A to triple Z, to go through all 26 letters, but it was all more advanced multiplication as you went along. And I think it was like once a week we took these tests. And if you passed it, you moved on to the next one. If you didn't pass it, you had to retake it until you understood it and you could pass on.
Oh.
And this semester, I was like, double Y. I'm proud of myself.
What we did was just like, there was this little like 2 columns and everything with short, just like additions and multiplications and everything, and we treated it as a race.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did that too.
I did that. I was just like, okay.
Oh yeah, and if
Boom!
See, I used to win that shit. Now, what? I'm 20 years old, don't know shit.
I'm just like, that's not gonna be used for me and everything. Why was I like that competitive about stuff that was just like numbers?
Exactly. We could have replaced that with literally anything else that could have been.
Yeah.
We could have replaced it with like little picture books like we have now. Like, shout out by Any Art.
Yeah. Oh my god.
We could have replaced that shit with like Lapu Lapu and Gabriela Silang.
Hell
Those
yeah.
picture books.
And guess what? Counting's a universal language. We could have taught it in any language.
Counting, I understood.
Yeah, I mean, but math in
In
general.
Espanol.
In Espanol.
Hell yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Anyways,
That's
that's our
that
episode, I guess. Yeah. Academics. Fuck them. But, you know.
It's not fuck education, it's fuck academics and the
Hell
system that upholds it.
Education's important, but what you
Yes.
consider education is more important. At least I consider at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we mean when we say relevant education. It's what you consider useful information to you at this point, you know? Like Venice is saying, I'm probably not going to need calculus for most of what I want to do for the rest of my life. Just saying.
I spent $300,000 on a bachelor's degree that I'm probably... Hopefully I'll use.
Somebody we work with has a psychology degree, and she works in food.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I know. Same. Someone I know who has a whole ass master's in communication. Fellow barista.
Literally just like not relevant in like the capitalistic world. Anyways, that's the episode. But before you end it off, anybody wants to give like a piece of advice to everybody? You can go first. Our guest of honor.
Oh,
I like saying that now. Guest of honor.
I'm just reading what's under why relevant education. I was like, oh, that's what I said earlier. That's what I meant. Needing to equip. I feel like we should say that because I feel like that's so important.
Yes, do that.
Why relevant education? Why ethnic studies? Because we need to equip BIPOC students at an early age with ethnic studies so they can navigate white spaces later in life. Sorry, I mentioned that in the meeting.
You're good.
This is literally your words.
That was so much more. Okay.
I wanted to add on to, but just like not only like navigate white spaces, but also create BIPOC spaces.
Oh yeah.
Like what this space is right now.
Mm-hmm.
With that, any general advice y'all want to give to everybody? It doesn't have to be about education. It's just about like in general how y'all feeling.
I will drive this home basically at the end of any time we do this podcast. It's rooting yourself to who you are, your culture, where you're from. I will always be an advocate for making sure you understand who you are before anything else, because right now every system that's in place is telling you not to be yourself. And the second you empower yourself with the knowledge that they can't tell you no, you can start having those conversations. You can start going out to actions. You can start speaking out against what's wrong because they can't tell you that you're wrong. Chris showed us a TikTok earlier that they made about somebody who said, so what are your pronouns? Whatever you fucking want to call me.
That's fucking powerful. That's the biggest flex ever. Even though like you're like probably like indecisive about your identity, you're so confident in saying just like anything fits me. That's a big. People can't even offend you and shit. Follow me on TikTok at mbfluid_.
You are who you are. You came from somewhere, and nobody can take that away from you. At the end of the day, like I said in the first episode, if you want to have that conversation with power, if you want to have that conversation with your teachers, the people above you, the systems of oppression, you need to start with yourself.
Yes.
That's where change happens first. And once you can do that, then hopefully you can start to impart that change in other places in your life, and for the better. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Chris, could you sign us off?
Oh, Venice, do you wanna?
Yeah, branching off of that, it comes to yourself, right? Learning to unlearn the years, the decades of what the fuck we were taught that was to conform to white supremacy, essentially. And create that own individuality. So you can do what Clark just said. Organize, educate, etc., etc.
Period.
Period.
I kind of wanted to pop off a little towards the end, just like be more forgiving about yourself. There's a lot, like Venice said, there's a lot of stuff you have to unlearn, and there's probably a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, a lot of demons and everything. There isn't a good and bad about yourself. There is a you. Accept all parts of you, understand what you need to work on, and love yourself more. And like, you can't just deny what bad parts about yourself. You can't just deny your toxic tendencies. You have to accept that and understand where that comes from, so that you can learn. Accept all parts about yourself and learn what you can work on.
From our roots we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we end off, Denise, anything you want to shout out? Your socials, whatever.
Oh.
Shout out to like anything. This is your time to shine.
Hey, what's poppin'? Follow me on IG, VENXG. Follow me on Twitter. That's so weird. You don't have to follow me. Yes.
Don't be shy.
Twitter, VENXGG. Tune into Becca Fest, May 7th at, I think, 6 p.m. Not May 7th. May 14th, May 15th.
You can send us that. We'll
my
post
goodness.
It too.
You don't have to. But yeah, that was the only other thing I could think of shouting out. But yeah, that's my socials.
And with that, y'all listen to a
Brown Conversation.
Period.
Period.
All right.
Thanks.